Hey guys, Sean from Triggered Precision Machine. Welcome to the channel. So today's video, we're going to talk about kind of a follow-on to the video I posted yesterday. And yesterday we talked about a budget reloading setup. So today we're going to talk about some of the dead ends that I've come across in reloading over the time that I've been doing it. And it's something I wanted to put in the video yesterday, but there's so much to talk about and so much to cover that I felt it'd be better if we had a separate video just for this topic. So let's get right into it. All right, guys. So I came up with a list of 6 different things here. These are just the 6 most important dead ends that I've come across during reloading. And they're things I don't do anymore, and that's because I've exhausted all of my testing on them, and I've come to realize that the juice isn't worth the squeeze for these specific things. And that's just based on the shooting that I do, so long-range hunting, some long-range recreational shooting, PRS matches, and stuff like that. So I should say that these do have merit in other kind of shooting areas like bench rest shooting. Some of the guys live and die by this stuff, but for the type of shooting that I do, it wasn't worth it. So we'll get right into the list. Number 1 is going to be bullet tip trimming. So there's a technical term for this. People call it mi-plat or mi-play trimming. It's a French word, so I don't exactly know how to say it. Essentially what this is doing is you're putting your bullet that you're going to load in a fixture, so it's in the same position every time, and you run a cutter over the tip of your bullet, and you repeat that process for all the bullets you're going to load. And what that does is it uniforms all your bullets, first of all, but it gives you a consistent ballistic coefficient, which theoretically should show up in your long-range groups. So you should have less vertical dispersion at long range. I've tested this out to 1,000 yards. I've tested it at 100 yards. I never saw a difference. There's so many variables that come into play when you're taking a shot like that it's super hard to sit there and say that, wow, that made a big difference. I'll do that again. And it's a pretty time-consuming process. Second thing up is going to be weighing cases. This is another thing that I read about and I experimented with for several years. So what you're doing in this technique is you're taking, let's say you have a group of 50 cases that you're ready to reload. So you're weighing each individual case on a lab scale or whatever scale you have, and you're finding a group of similar weights, and theoretically what that is showing is hopefully those cases have specific or similar case volume to each other. So then you load those in a group and you separate them all out within a couple grains of each other, and that should give you similar or more consistent velocities in smaller groups downrange because you're going to have less vertical spread. Another one of those things, I stopped messing with this for a long time, and I just went back to it probably a couple weeks ago and shot some groups with some stuff that I weighed out, and I weighed all my stuff down to the grain. So I had little groups of 5 and I shot them on target, and there was 0 difference. Granted, I only shot at 100 yards. I've done this at 1,000 yards though, and it's another one of those things, like I said, with bullet tip trimming. There's so many variables that I can't sit there and pinpoint and say that that made a big difference in what I see downrange. So number 3 is going to be trimming the case necks. So here's another one that I read about originally several years ago on the bench rest shooting forums, and it's very common in that venue. But what you essentially do is you take your new cases and you'll run a tapered expanding mandrel through them that oversizes the neck of the case. And then you take a cutter and you run a cutter on a mandrel over the outside diameter of the neck, and you cut the neck all the way down to the shoulder. So you're taking a very, very light cut, but you're uniforming that neck thickness that essentially is going to give you consistent neck tension amongst all your cases. So you trim the necks on all your cases, and then from that point on, you can neck size all your cases with your bushing, and in theory, it will give you a similar or the same inside neck diameter, which gives you the same neck tension and lends itself well to more accurate groups downrange. Another thing that I've tried at distance, 500 yards, 1,000 yards, 100 yards, never saw a difference for what I can do. I shoot off of a front bipod and a rear bag. Maybe if I was shooting in bench rest conditions with a bench rest rifle, maybe I would see a difference, but for what I do, I don't see a difference. So we'll talk about number 5 now. Measuring the run out of your bullet as it's seated in the case. So another thing that I read about and said, hey, I got to try that. I'll do anything to improve my accuracy downrange. So I'll try it. And you buy an expensive little fixture that will hold the bullet or hold the case, and it allows you to spin the case on some ball bearings, and then there's a small little indicator that rides over different parts of the bullet, and you can check and see how concentric the bullet is in relation to the body of the case. So I found that back then my bullets weren't exactly as concentric as I thought that they were going to be, but I was still shooting 1/4-inch groups and 1/2-inch groups pretty regularly. So I'm sitting there thinking that doing this and being able to sort these loaded cartridges out in groups that had low run out and high run out was going to improve my groups, and I did all that, never saw a difference. So, and that's a very time consuming process because you got to set the case on there and you got to roll it a couple times, and then you change the micrometer, and I checked a couple different places along the bullet profile, never saw a difference. So moving right along to our very last topic, and that's neck sizing only. So what this means is when you're in the reloading process and you've done all your prep on the primer pocket and everything, and you're ready to size your brass, like you saw in my video, I run a bushing full length sizer, which sizes not only the body, but I also size the neck by using those interchangeable bushings that you buy in 1,000th increments. So neck sizing only completely skips the body and the shoulder sizing portion of the process, and it only touches the neck. So the thought process behind this is your fire-formed brass, the brass that came out of your chamber, has a perfect carbon copy of the inside of your chamber. So on subsequent firings, when you put that fire-formed brass in there, it's going to line up perfectly with everything in your rifle. So everything should be in line. Your barrel, bullet chamber, everything should be in line. So there's going to be no deviation in the yaw of the bullet when it starts off on its trip down the barrel. In theory, it's a great process, and I think that it does have merit. I think that you do find more slight bit of accuracy by just neck sizing only. In fact, I know you do. But what I've found also is I ran cases this way and reloads this way for several years, and if you're in match conditions or hunting conditions or anything like that, where there's grit, dust, any sort of grime or moisture, anything like that, it contacts your loaded round, and you try to chamber that round, because it is a carbon copy of what came out of your chamber, there's hardly any wiggle room to rechamber that if there's anything extra on that case. So the next thing you know, you can't chamber a round during a match, then you have to dump that round out, then you're scrambling to find another one. So it wasn't worth it to me. I started full length sizing, and I don't see a big degradation of accuracy when I'm full length sizing the way that I do it. Some people might, but if you're shooting only in like bench rest conditions or just recreational stuff where there's no time constraints, and it doesn't matter to you if you have a case that's hard to chamber or not, and you just set it aside and don't fire that one that day, it's something that you might consider experimenting with. It's kind of cool. It's an easy experiment to do. In fact, it's easier than reloading because you're essentially eliminating one of the steps, right? So it's kind of worth messing with and seeing if it works for your rifle. What I've found is I can usually get 2 to 3 firings out of a case, because every time you fire that case, it expands just a little bit more. Because when it expands during the initial explosion inside the case, it's going to spring back a little bit, and every subsequent firing that you don't body size it, it expands a little bit more and springs back a little bit less. So eventually you're going to have a case that you absolutely can't chamber, and I found that happens after about 2 or 3 firings without doing any sort of body sizing or shoulder bumping and whatnot. So these are all things that I've experimented with extensively. And having said that, there's still things that I have kind of in my toolbox. I didn't like throw away any of these tools that perform these operations, but Right now, for what I'm doing, I don't do any of this stuff. I've simplified my loading process. What I took you guys through the other day was exactly how I load the ammo that I shoot. So what I want to do is, in one of the following videos here in the next couple weeks, I want to run through the whole loading process, then the load development process. In fact, I think tomorrow I have I've got an optimal charge weight load development target that I shot over the weekend, and we'll go over that and I'll show you how to interpret that, and we'll see what kind of results and follow-on testing we have to do with that cartridge. But until then, you guys, thanks for sticking around and watching. I appreciate the support. If you guys like what you're seeing, hit the like and subscribe button. Hope you guys are having a good day. We'll see you next time.